Alright, so I wanted to talk about the Xenologue for Fire Emblem Engage, since it is the biggest post-launch news that we're probably going to get, and just biggest content in general, besides the base game, unless they throw a big surprise and do a second expansion pass, which I highly doubt. If Three Houses didn't get one, I doubt Engage will. Maybe a Warriors game down the line. That would be pretty cool, I think. But for now, this is probably it. So I've seen this trailer twice. I saw it once yesterday without sound because I just didn't have the opportunity to turn it on. And then I remembered it existed and watched it again today with sound to get further context. I'm on Serene's Forest, which is a great Fire Emblem source, looking at their article as sort of a basis for the conversation. They sum up the trailer and I believe even dive into extra details that were given from various sources. So yeah, release date, less than 2 weeks. I want to talk a little bit more about that, but I'll probably get a little sidetracked with what I want to talk about with that, so we'll move past that for now. So we've got 2 new characters, sort of. We'll get more to that later as well. Nell and Nil. Not sure I agree with making the 2 new characters have nearly identical names. I can picture that getting confusing. Overall, though, I really like Nell's design. She looks pretty badass, I think. I like her sort of war-torn outfit. You don't really see it as much with the 3D models. I think that's because a lot of that aspect of her design is from the waist down, and the 3D models have mainly focused on the opposite of that. But yeah, I don't feel like you see a lot of characters like that. Like, I think Ike had some similar design choices with the whole worn torn stuff, but that's all I can really think of off the top of my head. As for Nil, I don't know why, it's probably a mix of his color scheme and hair, but he kind of just reminds me of Effie from Fates, which isn't necessarily a good thing. I didn't really like Effie. I mean, she's got a decent design. That wasn't the problem, it was more of the character herself, but hopefully Nil is more interesting, I guess. We have some basic information here, very similar to what we got from the base roster, to give us a general idea, but I still feel like there's a lot more to learn through support conversations and story in that. I'm actually happy there's this little summary here because I don't feel like you got a lot of that from the trailer, which that's not much of a problem or anything. It's understandable. But yeah, this does confirm they are twins. It seems in this reality that actually Alir was killed, and spoiler alert for the main story, but Nell and Nil are now the survivors out of Sombron's children. Although I don't know if they've said anything about Vale yet. Actually, I just realized Nil has a stone kind of similar to the one Vale had that Alir gave her. Does Nell is her necklace also kind of like that? Oh wait, Nil has a necklace too. I don't know. But yeah, I'm definitely interested in learning the context as to why these two survived in this reality, maybe why they didn't in the other, in that sort of thing. I like how this is also focusing on the 7 bracelets instead of the 12 rings. I think that's just a cool way to sort of implement a little deeper the DLC they've already released, and to give them more of a story in that. It wasn't something I thought of, but I think that's a really good idea. The other twist they give us, though, too, is that it's not just a couple of the main characters in this alternative timeline where things are drastically different. It's actually some of the other lords and stuff. We saw, Saline sort of come off a little colder, and then just seeing Alcrest yell at his quote unquote worthless brother when it's the exact opposite of that. Well, not the exact opposite, but his general thoughts are completely different in Engage. So I think that'll be really fun to explore. I don't know if they'll really dive into, I think it would be cool, but I just don't expect it, as to what may have broke them and cause them to behave so differently in this alternative timeline. What's also interesting that I think I noticed from the trailer, but maybe I'm missing something, is that it doesn't seem, and this is speculation, but we haven't really seen Ivy or Hortensia as enemies, which would make sense given their role sort of switching over in Engage. I suppose they can switch over in this story, though, too, originally being allies and then not. But I don't know if they're part of your team and you're building them, and then if things are just playing out so differently, they may not. So here they're talking about some of the stuff you can carry over. It looks like you can probably carry over both twins to the main story, I think. I think that's how it should be. And then 2 new classes, Enchanter and Mage Cannoneer. I am a little worried about that new Mage class. I kind of remember Fates having a similar class. I think a Ballista and something else also, perhaps. And I just didn't really like those classes. You couldn't really gain experience with them. You were essentially just a portable Ballista or whatever. And I hope that's not what's going on here. But that's what it looks like. But hopefully you can still gain experience and build the character. I don't know about this other class, Enchanter. Actually, I was kind of thinking that they may have given these 2 classes to the 2 new characters, but I don't think that's going to be the case. Actually, I think they were both listed as the Fell Dragon class, but one had a lance, one had an axe, I believe. I think that's the same class that Vale had, but she wields knives and magic, so I don't know if they can just wield all of them or these are just exclusive variations. All the design stuff we see here looks cool and fine, you know. Particularly Yunaka and the Enchanter class look pretty unique. But Casual Nell and Mage Cannoneer look pretty cool too. Is that one on the top right? That might be Nil? I don't know, we don't really have a good look there. The other big part of this reveal is that the 4 hounds, now dubbed the 4 winds in this alternative timeline, are all playable. I'm assuming that you don't bring them back after completing, though. I mean, Mavier, spoiler alert, is already playable. I don't know how I feel about the way they sort of went about this. Like, I can understand their personalities being a bit different, like they've done with these other characters, but they also went as far to change their designs and that, and even their names, which, you know, I'm okay with you behaving different if things played out differently and you had different affiliations, but would that really affect particularly your name? Even design wise, I mean, it's not too bad, but I don't know, particularly it's weird seeing Gris without his tattoos and piercings. Or, I'm sorry, Gregory. Actually, one thing I just noticed is this Zelestia. Is that a new class? Melusion? It might be new playable. I don't know if there was like an enemy with that same class, or if that's even, you know, official translation yet or anything. Everyone else matches up. And I also kind of like how Mavier just hasn't changed at all. But I don't know. I also find it a little disappointing if you can't bring them over, because once again, I said I was sort of interested in Marnie supports. I would definitely be interested in some Zephyia and Gris supports, even if it is an alternative version of this character who's a bit different, even just to see other characters sort of bring up comparisons and the history of these 2 different sides of the character. Hopefully, even if you don't bring them over, you still get some supports or a lot of context and whatnot in the actual bonus campaign that we're getting. Also, I'm sorry if I said wins earlier. I thought that's what it was. That's what I've seen going around, but this is saying the 4 wings. So I don't know. Obviously, symbolically, they're a bit different now, hence the new name. It says Mavier is actually now might be the second in command instead of Gris, which kind of makes sense given the different circumstances here. And now they're sort of affiliated more with our main characters here as opposed to the antagonist of Engage. We also saw the Somniel in Ruin, which is interesting. Other interesting stuff. Well, here it looks like they show just about everyone in Engage, so I don't know if they Like, I think in Cindered Shadows that they restricted who you can use, and it was its own completely separate thing. I don't know if they're doing that here, if this is just real late in the campaign. And then they actually showed the Fell Awakenings talking. Like, we see Tiki here. I think that's who it was in the trailer as well, which doesn't happen in Engage. So I'm sort of wondering if there's an explanation for that, or I just kind of hope they don't give a, oh, it's an alternative timeline, everything's just about opposite here, and that's that. I'm just sort of skimming the rest of this. I'm not diving too deep into it. I don't care too much about breaking everything down, especially when I'm going to be playing it in 2 weeks anyway, probably. But yeah, it says that they mirrored the map, so that's a interesting kind of fun detail to sort of continue to drive what they're going for here home. And yeah, back to the release date. The reason I sort of went away from it is because it sort of brings up discussion about the future of this series for people who haven't, been paying close attention to some of the more in-depth things that have been going on. But I guess it was discovered that there's different code names for all the Fire Emblem games, and based on the code names, it looks like there's something missing in between Three Houses and Engage. To sum it up as simply as I can, so people have speculated that that is the long-rumored Genealogy of the Holy War remake. And there's been speculation that this stuff was all pumped out so quickly because it was done, and that they may want to release the remake at the end of the year or something even. I don't know. That would be exciting. That is definitely something I wouldn't mind happening, but I wouldn't hold my breath. I think another reason, I don't know, a couple of reasons could be Advance Wars comes out on April 20th, and where they are different in some ways. These series are both kind of similar. I think they have a lot of overlap and probably don't want to compete against each other as much as possible. I think another reason could be too is, especially considering this stuff's been ready for a while, supposedly, potentially including the DLC that they sat on for whatever reason. I mean, the fact of the matter is, this game doesn't have multiple routes, and I feel like with Cindered Shadows releasing that months and months later, giving people a break, and then they might be willing to try out the expansion and then do one of the other stories, as opposed to here, where there isn't as much to come back to if you've completed the main campaign and don't intend to do it again. So this might be a way to sort of draw people in before they sort of move on from the game. This is just my own speculation. What do I know? But just some thoughts. What I do kind of find of interesting too with the talks of a remake, I'm surprised you don't see more discussion around a Binding Blade remake, just because the West has been familiar with Roy a lot longer than Sigurd. I can't help but admit I'm a little nervous because it doesn't seem like Fire Emblem remakes really sell well. Yet I really, especially the games that were never brought outside of Japan, want to see all of them eventually available here legitimately. And I think we still have 4 to go. And Genealogy of the Holy War seems to be one of the more popular titles from what I've seen. So if this doesn't work, that's concerning on whether or not we would ever get the other ones. But yeah, I think that's why we've even seen them release Shadow Dragon again the way they did, and why we haven't seen other Echoes dubbed titles since, I don't even know how long it's been, over 5 years, I think. Which is really a shame because that's a really good game. Very underappreciated in my opinion. I guess one thing that could maybe work is if, I think they said the Warriors games have been meeting expectations and doing decently, and they did a really good job with the Three Houses one, Three Hopes. So it would be cool if the regular remakes aren't working. At least, I don't know, see if you can give us the story or whatever in a Warriors spinoff, so we can, see the cool new interpretations of the designs and be more familiar with these characters and the events. Obviously, though, I'd much prefer. Well, I would like both, but I would still prefer an actual remake. But yeah, I'm not sure how I'm going to be doing Engage stuff from this point. I don't know if I'm the only one like this, but when I reach the end of a game I really like and I don't want it to end, I will procrastinate. I'll start only playing it on weekends when I have extra time and stuff like that. If I get occupied with something else, I won't even bother. And that's sort of where I'm at with Engage right now. I haven't recorded my last 4 maps, but I'm on the final map. I haven't done any of the DLC. I'm even debating taking a break till this comes out, because then I can use them on the DLC maps and at least be able to grind some supports with them if I wind up liking them. But yeah, just that one more main map, so procrastinating on that, procrastinating on even just recording my thoughts on the last few maps, which probably isn't a good thing. I'll probably forget some details or whatever, but that's just sort of where I'm at right now. So I might actually do the final map too, like I did the first few parts. That's just sort of what I'm thinking. I won't guarantee anything. And then with other stuff too, I don't know. I don't know if I'm as passionate about some of the other stuff as I am with Fire Emblem to really dive this deep into everything. So it might be more stuff like I did with Hi-Fi Rush and GoldenEye. Or maybe I'll try other things. I have another idea. I won't say what it is yet. I don't know if it'll work or if I'll even be up for it, but when the time passes, I'll at least share exactly what I was sort of thinking here. Just something I thought would be a little different and fun. To touch on something else too while I'm thinking about it, the one thing I will say is, once again, I don't really like Effie as a character, but they did a good job on this design. While we're talking about her design, I'm happy we got it for free, I guess. It is still a bit of a shame. I know it's subjective, but I think there were other characters that I don't know if this theming would have fit them as well, but I would have preferred them to get a really cool, nice new alt, but it is what it is. I'm thinking about Perry in particular. I know someone who has been vouching for a Halloween art for her for a little while. And she doesn't have any alts yet, I think. And I think she was one of my more favorite characters from that game, too. Yikes with heroes, though. We went, 2 banners without an engage one? Which I was just sort of hoping they did them all in a row so we don't have to wait forever to get everyone. I think I've already talked about this, but I'll address it again. Especially if they're going to give each country its own banner. I don't even know at this point if they're going to have people waiting so long just to get some of these really popular characters. Especially now that the final big DLC thing might be over within a couple weeks. I would be really surprised if the next banner isn't engaged with that sort of connection there, but I wonder if we'll just get the Lords and then we'll be drip-fed everyone else. Even doing one every other banner wouldn't have been that bad. You still would have had them by like the end of summer, I think. And maybe they can go back to that. Maybe they just sort of skip 2 months so that they could sort of coincide with the expansion. But I don't know. I don't mean to seem impatient or anything, but I would, me, and I'm sure many others would prefer to get these characters now while they're hot rather than waiting till we're done, taking a big break, or just completely moving on from Engage. Just seems like a missed opportunity, even if some people may not be happy about it.